All right. So many big stories going on. President Trump has had this cabinet meeting. He's had this peace summit in Alaska. We're finding out all kinds of new information about the crime in these Democrat cities and Washington, D.C. To help me go through all this, I have Sean Spicer. Sean, thank you for joining me again.
Always a pleasure, Stephen. Always a pleasure.
So President Trump holds this cabinet meeting. I mean, this guy's had more cabinet meetings in the first 7 months than I think Biden had in his entire 4 years.
Yeah, this was number 7. But you know what I love about them? I know the media likes to mock them, but why I like them is twofold. Number one, I can't use this on you because you're too in the know. But if you walk up to the average person, this isn't meant to be an insult. Just ask them, name one person from the Biden administration that served in his cabinet. Maybe they get Pete Buttigieg. I don't know. Maybe Merrick Garland. I don't know. But my point is, there's just, it's not on them. It's not, like I said, it's not meant to be a trick question. But it's just, there was no one significant that served in his cabinet, and they weren't doing anything significant. And I think what I love about these cabinet meetings is you literally he goes around the horn, as he does every time. And every single one of them, Stephen, every one of them has a list of significant accomplishments. And you remember, by the way, you just pointed out that there's been 7. So you're only able to use the last 30 days. So you have to be able to go, when he calls on you, what have you done? How are things going? Well, here's what I've done. Boom, 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 boom. But he goes around the table, and every single one of them, Lee Zeldin, Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Sean Duffy, they all have something to say about how they're advancing the agenda. Every single one of them. And what I love about these is, as I said at the outset, I know the media kind of likes to mock them, but I think it's this public accountability. It's like, you can't hide. I mean, dude, I don't know about you, Stephen, but when I used to take seminar classes in college, I was like, back row, corner, don't call on me. And you can't hide in a Trump cabinet. You can't hide. He's going to call you out. So you have to have done something.
Yeah, I would be nervous to be in one of those meetings. I remember the first time I interviewed Colonel Douglas McGregor. He was super intimidating. He had all these great answers. And then we ended the show. And then at the end, he said, "And what are you going to do to save the nation, son?" And I was like, I don't know. I'm just a YouTuber. I share information. And he's like, that's exactly the right answer. He's like, you are doing your country a service by getting the truth out. But man, was I intimidated to have this retired colonel that's been to war ask me, what are you going to do to change the nation? I was like, So,
well, I can't imagine what the prep's like for a Trump cabinet hearing, because the senior staff to each one of those members of the cabinet have to be like, hey, you're going to get called on. What are we going to say we did? Because we gotta be able to answer the American people and to President Trump. So I would know that you've got to, and remember, like I said, you've only had 30 days. You can't call, oh, well, in February, Mr. President. It's like, no bueno, man. You've got since July 4th.
Yeah. Well, one thing I learned in corporate America is they don't care what you've done. They care what you've done recently, so you can't coast off of past accomplishments. I noticed that RFK Jr. said, we've got a big announcement about autism and vaccines coming out in the next 30 days. We've cleaned up a lot of stuff over at Big Pharma, HHS, CDC. And then Tulsi Gabbard, she said, oh, yeah, we've got all this information on Brennan and Comey and Obama and Hillary. All of that is moving forward with the Department of Justice. Then she said something interesting about finding shenanigans about the 2020 election in FBI burn bags. Let me pull this up and we'll watch it together.
Okay.
And you've also found many bags of information. I think they call them burn bags. They're supposed to be burned and they didn't get burned, having to do with how corrupt the 2020 election was. And when will that all come out?
Mr. President, I will be the first to brief you once we have that information collected. But you're right, we are finding documents literally tucked away in the back of safes in random offices in these bags and in other areas, which again speaks to the intent of those who are trying to hide the truth from the American people and trying to cover up the politicization that was led by people like John Brennan and James Clapper and others that have caused really immeasurable harm to the American people and to our country.
Great job. Thank you. We look forward to hearing it.
She's not ready to share yet, but they found stuff about the 2020 election. Of course, we know from FBI Director Kash Patel, on the day that they go to burn all this stuff, they find all this stuff about Obama's connection to Russiagate, Clinton's connection, the fact that Obama shut down investigations into the Clinton Foundation. Don't you feel like, I don't know, luck or fortune or blessing or what, but they're finding all these burn bags that are full of information years later that might be used to actually get justice in America. What are your thoughts on that?
Have you had John Solomon on your show yet, Stephen?
No, I've wanted to.
I'll help you because
Okay.
John has come on my show a couple times, and it literally blows my mind what they're finding, because we were so gaslit, like, you're a conspiracy theorist, you guys are crazy, and then suddenly it's not hearsay. And this is what I love about what Tulsi said. It's paper, and it's emails, and it's, you know, presentations, and so you actually can see it, and it sort of becomes irrefutable. And that's what, and I don't want to get ahead of our conversation, but that's what I love about the president, you know, going after like Fed Governor Lisa Cook and all these other people, is that it's not like my word against yours. Here are the receipts. Here's the paper that proves what I've been talking about and saying. And I think what I loved about how John Solomon has exposed all this stuff is that there's hearsay and conjecture. I believe this. I think this is going to happen. It's obvious to, you know, like, but that's hearsay. What we have started to see uncover are documents that showed what they knew when, and what they didn't know, and what they tried to do. And it seems pretty obvious to me. And I've said this before, Stephen, but this whole like Russia thing was very personal to me. I was one of 6-7 people in the room on January 6th at Trump Tower when he got that first intel briefing from the intel assessment with Comey, Brennan, and Clapper. I was there. I've had a security clearance for 20 years, so I was allowed in the room. I saw it. And when BuzzFeed and CNN came out with this fake Steele dossier, I shredded it immediately. I was like, this isn't true. This isn't true. And they went ahead with it anyway. And they literally, I think, cast a shadow over President Trump's entire first term with made up false charges. It's like that person that gets accused of some heinous crime, but then DNA evidence 10 years later exonerates them. You're always still tainted with it. And I just can't imagine what President Trump and we would have been able to accomplish if we hadn't spent the whole time having to talk about Russia collusion, et cetera.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm excited about this. Here's where I will, and I asked John Solomon this. I don't want them to get my hopes up, right? If it's just, oh, we found all this stuff, it's sort of like saying, like, I found a lottery ticket from 1812 that shows that you won, but you can't ever cash it, right? You're like, okay,
Yes.
great, that's nice,
Oh,
but
yes.
you know, so don't get me all fired up about Comey and Clapper and Brennan and the collusion and what they did, and then nothing happens. Like, I don't like. It's almost like reliving it again. I spent a ton of time and money on the Mueller investigation, defending the defenseless, because it wasn't true. It was all a big hoax. So I just don't, if they're like not going to go through with this stuff, then don't even tell me about it. I really hope that they understand that they're getting a lot of people fired up about this, because I want them held accountable. When you realize what Comey actually did and knowingly did, then, you know, it really, you know, means a lot.
Yeah, no, I love that. You know, don't show me a lottery ticket if I can't cash it, you know, like it's like the opening of Top Gun. Son, you're writing checks your body can't cash. Like,
right.
Don't get my hopes up. If you guys are going to do it, cross the Rubicon and get it done. We got to get this corruption out. Yeah, I need to have John Solomon on because, and I'm not prepared for this because I didn't know you were going to bring it up, but with the whole Russiagate story, he told a story in an interview one time. He comes home late at night, 2 dark, shadowy figures approach him, and they say, "You're on the right track. Keep looking in. This story is fake. You need to look into these people. So somebody from the intel community took a big risk. Now, according to him, he doesn't know who they were. They didn't come back, but it put him on the path like a hound dog for helping figure this out and saving Trump's reputation. But again, I agree with you. Let me switch gears with you on this. President Trump, he's getting a lot of division, right? On the one hand, you've got people in Washington, D.C., they're saying, oh my gosh, we love how clean the streets are. They're getting the graffiti. We haven't had a murder in 2 weeks.
Right.
You know, and then you've got politicians saying this is lies. It's one of the safest cities. This is the capital, for heaven's sake. Why are Democrats so mad? Is this because they don't get credit for cleaning it up? Does this interrupt their narrative that they are the only ones that can protect from crime, but yet their inaction is the reason there's so many deaths and overdoses and robberies and mugging and assaulting of women?
Yeah, there's a lot to break down there. But since I'm getting on to my 50s, I want to ask you a question before I forget, because this is tangential to this, and then I want to get into the whole issue in D.C., because I live in Northern Virginia. In fact, I'll be heading into D.C. very shortly to do some media. You just played News Nation. I'm a News Nation kind of guy. But I mean, point is, I go in there a lot. My kids go to school there. Like I actually know this. But let me just ask you: do you travel to New York City ever?
I flew in once and flew right back out to Puerto Rico.
Okay, it's smart. Well, for those of us on the East Coast, a lot of times we take the train because it's quicker, it's easier, it's more reliable. Anyway. The reason I bring this up is if you ever go into Penn or Moynihan stations in New York post 9/11, there's National Guard members carrying sidearms every day since 9/11. No one has said a damn word. It's run by a Democratic mayor. Where's the concern about the National Guard there? Trying to keep Penn Station.
Did they use them on the subway?
I don't know if I don't ride the subway in New York, so I'll admit that. I usually walk. I'm a big walker in New York, but I'm just saying that like these guys are acting like, you know, it's like the redistricting stuff where it's like they forgot that they invented this. But let me get back to DC for a second. Here's what troubles me about DC. And a couple things. Number one, I made this point a couple weeks ago. Pick a neighborhood. I'll challenge any Democrat to do this. Pick a neighborhood of your choice. Navy Yard, Capitol Hill, Georgetown, and agree that without a security detail, you'll walk around 5 blocks once the sun goes down. Most of them would never agree to it. They know it's not safe. But here's the kicker, Stephen, and this is what really gets me going in a world where we're talking about misinformation and lying, whatever. They literally have charged a DC police commander with cooking the books. And I had the head of the police union in DC on my podcast a couple weeks back. And people have to understand what's happened in the city. Number one, the city council in DC decriminalized a ton of crimes. So if you're not charging people, if you're not looking for it anymore, you get to say crime went down because there's less of what you're not charging anyone with. That's number one. Number two, as I said, they've literally charged a police commander. And by the way, it's not like he denies it. He just says higher ups made it with cooking the books, with taking the numbers and bringing them down. Okay. So this is not conjecture. He is basically saying, yes, I did it, but I did it at the behest of my seniors. Number three, the head of the DC police union said what they do is on scene when, let's say that I got stabbed in downtown DC. When the police arrive, instead of calling it a violent crime, a stabbing, which is clearly what it is, what they put down in the books is a medical emergency. So the goal is that at the scene, they downgrade the incident so it never rises to the level of being a criminal problem. But this is the dirty secret that they don't want you to know, okay, is that they're cooking the books. And so for all the talk that the Dems and the media have, this isn't conjecture. This isn't, again, the DC, they passed a law decriminalizing everything. They've got the guy for decriminalizing, and the police, are known to downgrade events. So they love to say that stats are down, but of course they're down. They're not pursuing them. But ride around DC at any given time, and you can see it for yourself. But to the heart of your question, which is the why, what Trump has shown now is their incompetence. Every major city outside of Miami is run by a Democrat, every single one of them. Okay. And so if that's the case, when you go in and basically end crime by a show of force, you've proven to the citizens of that city that it can be done. It's like the border, Stephen, right? Joe Biden said, I can't do anything. It's the law and I can't, and it's not me. I need an act of Congress. Trump came in and said, oh yeah, watch this. And what are you now? 3 months? We haven't had an illegal border crossing? 3 months? It's leadership. And he proved that they were lying to us and gaslighting us. And it's the same thing that's going on in DC, is that the people there are saying, wait a second, we were told that there's nothing that can be done. We can't stop this. And clearly that wasn't the case.
If you've been living on credit cards just to cover groceries, gas, and bills, you know those interest rates are brutal. Why keep paying 20% or more to banks when you could call my friends at American Financing? They have mortgage rates in the 5s, and they are showing people every day how to keep more of their hard-earned money and keep it out of the hands of credit card companies. Right now, American Financing is helping homeowners save on average $800 a month by using their home equity to wipe out high-interest debt. With no upfront fee and no obligation, and just a 10-minute call to a salary-based mortgage consultant. And here's the kicker. If you start today, you could save 2 mortgage payments, putting even more cash in your hands right now. Don't wait. Call American Financing now at 888-686-8030. That's 888-686-8030, or visit americanfinancing.net/Gardner. Yeah. Well, man, you make a great point. He's literally exposing, and that's why I couch that question as like, hey, we're going to save you from all this crime. If you get a Republican in here, imagine how much worse it is. But their inaction and their policies are the reason so many people are dead. It's the reason so many women are assaulted or violated. People are mugged, carjacking. I mean, it's.
Can I tell you a funny story? I lived on Capitol Hill in the mid 1990s. And I walked out one day. It was a Saturday morning. There was I will never forget this, because the race for the cure, it's a 5K in DC. I assume they still do it, but I haven't lived there in 30 years. And so I wake up Saturday morning, and right outside my house, I had parked my Honda Accord. And I look, and it's not there. And I'm asking my roommates, did I swear, I mean, again, it wasn't, it was it was running a 5K the next day. So it wasn't like a late night. I said, I swear the car's here. Everyone, yeah, of course. You parked it here and then walked in the house. And I was like, okay. So I called the DC police, and I won't use the guy's last name because maybe he's still alive. The cop shows up and says, I bet you Kevin stole it. And he gave me his last name too. I said, I'm sorry, excuse me? He goes, yeah, I bet Kevin stole it. I said, okay, I'm missing something here. I don't get it. He goes, oh, Kevin steals cars. I go, so you know this? And he said, yeah. He goes, he steals cars. He goes in front of the judge. They let him out. Then he steals another car. But then we get him. Then he goes back out. I go, literally an hour and a half later at Kentucky, I think it is Kentucky and 7th, if I recall, Northeast, there's a 7-Eleven. And sure enough, Kevin's in there buying a donut or whatever, and they arrest him. And the U.S. attorney, or the deputy U.S. attorney, however it works in D.C., said, I want you to come to court because I want you, I was working on Capitol Hill at the time, and he said, I want you to understand how this works. And I said, okay, what do you mean? Like, what's going to happen? He goes, did you sell Kevin drugs? I said, what? He goes, they're going to just say that you had a relationship with him. You gave him his car. You sold him drugs. You had needed gas money or whatever. And I was like, this is insane. He goes, I know. I want you to watch how this process is going to work, because we're going to let him out. And I said, this has got to be crazy. So this has been going on for a long time in DC. And I think that people have to understand that, like, when you expose it the way that President Trump is, which is to say you put people on there, show them force. He just said in that cabinet meeting that you just mentioned, in the Capitol, if you commit a capital offense, i.e. kill someone, you will face capital punishment. once you know, I don't know about you when you were growing up, Stephen, but I remember like being scared. Like if I did something wrong, that I was going to get arrested, I was going to have a record. Kids don't feel that anymore because they're not going to get arrested. They're not going to be prosecuted. They're not going to have a record. We've created a system that encourages crime. And I think what President Trump is showing is that we don't have to put up with it or accept it anymore, that you can actually create a situation where people will not do things if they know that they're going to face a consequence. But that's the thing, is that we're exposing it. And the Democrats hate that because they want to pretend that they're looking out for these people when we know they're not.
Yeah. Wow. I saw several videos on X this morning about people saying, yeah, I just robbed this place and I get out because it's under $1,000, or I beat this person up, but then I say, I'm sorry, they let me out. It's happened like 6 or 7 times. It's like, and I want to talk about the cashless bail here in a minute, but what are your thoughts on President Trump wanting to now go to Chicago? You've got the governor saying, do not come here. I'll fight you with my last breath. You've got the mayor saying, we're not going to go after criminals. That's racist. We've tried that before. We don't have a criminal problem. We just need affordable housing. Now, this is the guy that used money from Chicago to bring in hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants. This is the guy who gave out food money to illegal immigrants instead of his own citizens. This is the guy who gave housing vouchers so that people in Chicago couldn't afford a house, or people got bumped out because an illegal immigrant could pay higher rent than a resident. Does this guy have a leg to stand on?
No, I mean, look, I don't think I've been to Chicago in a few years, but I know a bunch of people who live there. And to a person, it's very, I mean, I don't think anybody, that's why I find this whole thing funny in a way, which is like, it's like the DC thing where I am familiar with, that there's no one who thinks it's safe. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, so to pretend that it doesn't exist or that you're doing your job is ridiculous. But to your question, I'm a little conflicted on this issue. Here's why. DC is unique. It is a federal district set up by its framers, by our framers. And so the president does have the legal authority to do this unquestionably in the District of Columbia. And no one doubts him, including the mayor here. Chicago is a different animal. And I say this because there's a lot of legal nuances, and I'm not a lawyer, but when the military, the reserve or the active duty component, they serve under what we call Title 10 orders. They are federal troops doing a federal mission, and the law prohibits them from doing domestic law enforcement. But the loophole is National Guard troops fall under Title 32 to do domestic things. And so when a president calls them up, they're supposed to come up to Title 10 orders unless the governor's willing and able to do that. And that's why in DC, remember, the president oversees the National Guard. So he has full authority there to call up a state's National Guard troops, which is where, like in Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, the incompetent governor there, does have the authority to do that. So the reason I say this is that we're going down a much more complicated legal structure there. But here's what I think should be better. It would be better is that what we were just talking about. I believe the president should go 30 days and put out all the stats. Okay. Here's what we've done in our nation's capital. We have made it safer. Here's how crime has dropped. Here's what you can now do. You know, he mentioned in the cabinet meeting, people are going out to dinner and they're walking around. I mean, I know, like I said, when you walk around Penn Station or Moynihan Terminal in New York, you see all the National Guard people, service members, you feel a little safer there. I think that's the same thing with DC, is that people I know, I talked to somebody when I was walking my dog this morning that works right down near Union Station and was like kind of commenting on how like it's a heck of a lot safer now because you got people down there. So I think what President Trump should do is basically use DC as the national example and say, I did it in DC. Go to Chicago, do an event and say, you know what? You should demand that Mayor Johnson does this. He has the ability to do this in coordination with Governor Pritzker. It's their choice. We have shown you that it can be done. Now you need, as citizens, to demand it. I would rather do that than get into a legal back and forth about who has the authority to do it, because it distracts from the contrast that I think we can make.
Okay, interesting. That is interesting. So instead of a bully stick, a blueprint, and use that to say, why aren't you guys following this? I did want to say, like,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was right. When there was all that crime on the New York subway, the governor brought 1,000 National Guard because it would deter the criminals. It would give people courage. Nobody was riding the subways, and now they are. So it can be done. But I totally hear.
I'm literally, by the way, as you say this, I'm like going on X, because I love that thing from that you just pulled from Colin Rugg on Hochul, because like that to me, March 6, 2024. I hope people. I'm literally typing in the search bar, because I think that to me, it's just that, again, it's the hypocrisy. And they do this with the redistricting, where they do stuff and no one has a problem with it, except when they do it. So I'm glad you pulled that up, because it just shows, again, it's bringing the receipts.
Yeah.
So I'm literally not, I'm not trying to make sure I get it. But can I make one quick point about DC that is like a pet project of mine, or a pet peeve of mine? So one of the things that I think that we forget is, and this is where I want Republicans to take advantage of this, because we control all the three sort of houses of government. We got the presidency, the House, and the Senate. Washington, D.C., in I think it was 1791, was created as a federal district. It was a perfect square, 10 mile by 10 miles. That's what the framers called for in the Constitution. They wanted a federal district that wasn't in any one state, so that the federal government wasn't beholden to another state. So they took part of Maryland, part of Virginia. In 1864. They gave the part back to Virginia for a variety of reasons. So now, instead of a perfect square, it kind of looks like a big chunk got eaten out of the corner of it, the Virginia corner. So when you fly into Reagan National Airport, Alexandria, Arlington, that used to be DC. It is now back to being part of Virginia. And so my point is, if Republicans were smart right now, they would create a federal district to maintain the framers' intent that would go from the Lincoln Memorial all through the National Mall, the Smithsonian's, the White House, to the Supreme Court just beyond Capitol Hill. Call that the District of Columbia, federal district, had no residents, and then give the rest back to Maryland, because the Democrats want to make DC a state, give it 2 senators. And I believe that that's unconstitutional, but that's their plan, because then they'd have 2 additional Democratic senators for life. Republicans need to start playing chess and thinking ahead. We see a problem like this right now. Instead of fighting it out, what we should do is say, you know what? DC's a problem. We're giving back the part that was Maryland to Maryland. Maryland should be happy about that. It's more federal dollars. All those people actually get to be part of a state now and vote. So I just think that like moments like this, we can't miss the moment. And sometimes we look back and go, we should have done this. And I'm like, nope, this is the right thing to do right now.
Gotcha. Okay, so the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois are both saying there is no crime problem, even though I go on Breitbart News and every Monday they update you on how many people were murdered in Chicago and what percentage of those were children. It's horrifying. But you've got the former governor, Rod Blagojevich, and he's saying we absolutely need Donald Trump to step in. Let's listen to him.
I know you watched this Pritzker extravaganza today. He had everyone there. They were all there. Teachers unions represented. You had the police commission. They were all there. So he apparently is trying to argue, along with Johnson, that things are stupendously better, not perfect, but far better in Chicago, and that Trump's going there to incite violence. What do you say tonight?
I hope President Trump comes to Chicago and can do in Chicago what he's done in Washington. No murders in Washington in 12 days. In Chicago, 254 people have been murdered in 233 days. You can honestly wake up in the morning and say, somebody's going to get murdered today. And you can also say 80% of the people murdered will be black, because 80% of the murder victims in Chicago are black. And if this was happening in the neighborhood Pritzker and these white limousine rich liberals live in, he would not only beg Trump to bring the National Guard, he'd scream and shout for the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and the Air Force. This is hypocrisy with a touch of racism, and it proves that the Democratic Party today, Black Lives Matter only for their votes, not when it comes to keeping them safe in their disadvantaged neighborhoods.
Wow. You're
Brilliant.
on 254 murders in 233 days. 80% of them are Black Americans, and this is the party that represents Black people, supposedly. Your thoughts on Blagojevich?
He's spot on. I mean, it's just funny how we never, like, why won't the media ever talk about this kind of stuff, right? You think about this, it's because it's under them. It's under Mayor Johnson and Governor Pritzker, right? So because they control the system, the media won't ever talk about it. Chicago, I mean, think about that. If that many people were dying in any other city, it would be front page news every single day. But because it exposes the level of corruption and incompetence that exists in the Democratic Party, they won't touch it. But he's absolutely right. If you can't say that you care about Black lives and then allow that many Black Chicagoans to die without any accountability.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's bring one on the screen. Let's hear from a Black resident in Chicago and what she thinks of Donald Trump.
So I just finished watching an interview of Governor Pritzker of Chicago telling President Trump not to send the military into Chicago after President Trump announced that he could potentially be sending the military to Chicago next after he sent them into Washington, D.C., which, by the way, after he sent them into Washington, D.C., the crime rate has reportedly exponentially went down. So you have this governor, he was standing on a boat, you guys, taking questions from the press, who was asking him how did he feel about President Trump announcing that he would send the military to Chicago next, potentially. And he's like, well, we'll take it up legally. We'll take them up in courts, because, you know, that's how the Democrats always operate, whether it's illegal immigration or anything. They're gonna go to court. They don't do nothing else. They're gonna go to court. Okay? Because they bought and paid for attorneys and judges doing the bidding for them. At any rate, this dude is on a boat saying how safe it is in Chicago. And we, as you can see, don't have any problems. It's safe. I just walked down the street to dinner with my wife, and he's taking an interview on the boat, and he's taking an interview downtown in Chicago. Why didn't you have that interview on the South Side, sir? Okay? Why don't you go to the South Side and have that interview so we can really see the streets of Chicago and how things are going on in Chicago? Because for years it's been reported that Chicago has had one of the highest murder rates, okay? Black on Black crimes for the party that loves to promote Black Lives Matter. We didn't hardly hear anything about all of those killings that were reportedly happening in Chicago weekend after weekend. But, don't let it be a white cop on the Black guy, because, we going to hear that nonstop. Because y'all love to run that division, because that's how y'all keep us going against each other and staying in power. But now that's coming to an end. That's just, at downtown Dallas and on a boat taking questions, talking about Chicago is safe. When we know that it was nicknamed Chirac for a reason, because it was like a war zone. And like President Trump said, there should not be any inner city in this country that looks like a war zone. Y'all don't have no problem taking billions and billions of dollars overseas under the guise of humanitarian aid, but you can't even do nothing for your own darn cities. And then when you have a man that's stepping up, trying to get the crime rate under control, trying to close the borders, trying to do more for the citizens of the country, all of a sudden, all y'all can do is go to court. Man, the hypocrisy is off the charts.
She actually made your point, Sean. You've got people in Chicago going, wait a minute, we just saw a blueprint for no murder. I don't want my teenage son getting murdered. I don't want my elementary daughter being murdered. I want to go to the grocery store. I want to go to the movies. I want to be able to park my car outside and not have it carjacked. Like, I think you're right. I think if they show this blueprint of it's them, their actions and their policies that are making you unsafe, and we can change that. This lady, she's waking up. She's going, wait a minute. You're in a rich area with security, and I'm down here in what you might call a war zone, and you supposedly care about Black people, and I'm watching Black people be gunned down. Your thoughts on this woman?
She's absolutely right. And again, I wish it probably your show is probably one of the only places that people will see that video outside of her account, because the media is going to ignore this thing. But it's funny, I was thinking to myself, I just commented to you about New York City. I went there probably 2.5, 3 months ago. And like I said, when I go to New York, I love to walk just because I love people watching. And so I walked to this meeting, and it was probably 15, 20 blocks. And when I get there, the guy says, how did you get here? And I go, I don't know. I walked. What do you mean? He goes, I can't believe you did that. And I said, he goes, I would never advise anyone to do this. He's retired NYPD. And I said, really? I said, I love walking around New York. He said, Sean, please, next time call me, at least let me know you're coming. I'll kind of meet you halfway and I'll walk with you. And I was like, look, I'm not a baby. But he was like, seriously, he goes, I would never, ever advise somebody to walk as far as you did down. And I said, maybe I'm too naive about this stuff, but she's right. The idea that you can't walk safely through a neighborhood in a major city should speak volumes. And again, if this was anything else, Stephen, like we'd be hearing outrage. If this was a Republican city where you had this level of crime or ineptitude, they would be doing stories every day calling for this guy's head. But because it's run all by Democrats, they won't call it out. I mean, I just don't understand how it gets ignored. It's Chicago. It's a major city. We did all of these Black Lives Matter protests where cities were torn apart, vandalism ensued, all this destruction. And yet here we are hearing those statistics that Governor Blagojevich mentioned, which would make you think, wow, we still have a lot of work to do. And yet there's no calls, no outrage, no big protests about what's happening in Chicago. Why?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons might be is this soft on crime, these George Soros district attorneys and cashless bail, which President Trump just signed an executive order saying, if we find out you guys continue to do cashless bail and not hold criminals accountable, then we're pulling your funding. And Pam Bondi, the attorney general, she gave a really great reason for why we need cashless bail. Let's watch this and then we'll wrap up. Oops, 1 second here.
Got out on cashless bail, whose house was burglarized, and the defendant got out on cashless bail, went back the next night and burglarized her house again. That's why this is so important. A man got in a fight with another guy. He had a gun. He was let out. Next night, he got out, went back and killed him. So that's why it's so important, President, what you're doing. And thank you for protecting the American flag. And we'll do that without running afoul of the First Amendment as well. And President, I think I think Gaddy Serralta had something he wanted to give you on behalf of all the law enforcement who are out there.
So she gives this example of, somebody robs a house. The cops have to let them go because of policy and goes back and robs this woman again. A neighbor approaches a neighbor with a gun, gets arrested, and then gets out and goes and kills the neighbor the next day. Like, at what point? Do you remember during the lockdown? I covered this a lot. There were people just randomly punching pregnant women in the bellies in New York, randomly punching women in the face. And then you find out they're literally out within hours of literally punching pregnant women in the bellies.
It goes back to my Kevin story in DC. This is not new to them. It's just that now literally like they don't even actually go through the motions. You mentioned these Soros DAs. This is what DC has right now. And he doesn't believe that anybody should be in jail. It's amazing. I get a kick out of this. How do you look people in the face and say that somebody who commits a heinous crime, that person shouldn't be punished? Tell me that you could look at the victim if it was a family member, a friend, or a neighbor of yourself. Like, I don't know how the DA here can do that. It blows my mind. And it just doesn't, it doesn't pass the smell test. What cashless bail? That's not a term. That's a made up leftist phrase. That's just saying, let them go, because it sounds like you want to say, like you want to keep the word bail in there just so it sounds tough. Cashless bail. Cashless bail is no bail. Like, let's cut the BS. It's not cashless. It's like saying that I'm not going to charge you tonight for dinner. It's cashless. No, it's free. There's no charge. That's the word for it. But they want to dress it up so it sounds like they're not being completely soft on crime, which is what they are. But that's an insane term. Cashless bail. It's no bail. I don't know how we allow this to happen, but this is how the left. I wrote a column, Stephen, at SeanSpicer.com about how the left has really gotten away with weaponizing language. And this is another example of this. They use words that get, into our nomenclature that dominate the conversation. So, it's pro-choice and all this stuff. They are really good at them and the media doing this. So it's, a Maryland man in the case of Abrego Garcia, because we don't want to call him an alleged gangbanger who, beat the crap out of his wife. So we'll just say he's a Maryland man. But this is the same thing. Cashless bail is just not bail. There's no such thing. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, what a great example. And then you've got Mamdani running for mayor of New York. He wants to get rid of all misdemeanor charges, defund police, open air drug use, legalize prostitution, closing prisons, release criminals onto the street. No misdemeanor should exist. Violence is an artificial construct.
Can I hit on a random one for you?
Yeah,
the second one down, the open air drug use. Here's what I don't get. I asked the DC police union chief this the other day, just because I couldn't help myself. I said, let me ask you a question. Can I, in downtown DC, legally drink a beer? He said, no, it's against the law. Open air, open container. I said, okay, that's what I thought. Can I smoke pot? And he said, yeah, well, technically, yes, you can. I said, so how is this possible that we can't drink a beer or, whatever, have anything alcoholic in public, but you can get high and I have to smell it and deal with it? I mean, like downtown DC is disgusting, as is New York and all of our cities now. It smells between urine and pot. And yet, I just don't understand where we've gotten to the point of, if someone wants to get high, I have to deal with the consequences in the middle of a city as I walk, down the street. Yeah.
It's so bad. And now we've got Gavin Newsom making his way. This is an open drug area down Sunset Boulevard in California. In San Francisco, one of the open air drug areas is literally at the children's bus stop. And they've now got an app in San Francisco where you can report homeless people crapping on the sidewalk so that to avoid that, or someone in the city can go and clean it up. Like, these are not the neighborhoods that anybody wants to be living in, raising children in. It's
disgusting.
Yeah. Sean, if people want to catch the Sean Spicer Show, where can I point them?
Well, you can go on Apple or Spotify, obviously, but then YouTube is the best. You can go watch it on Rumble and X, but it's super helpful if people are subscribing to YouTube or going to Apple and Spotify. And then obviously my website, SeanSpicer.com, has all my newsletter and everything like that they can subscribe to. But YouTube is king, baby.
Okay. Well, I will put those direct links. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Always a pleasure to be with you, Stephen.